She opened her eyes and saw them standing there, tall, perfectly still, watching her. They had no mouths. They never spoke, but somehow, she understood everything they wanted her to know. The room was quiet except for the sound of her breathing. Deep, slow, rhythmic. Her therapist's voice had faded into the background, becoming just another part of the silence. And then, she wasn't in the room anymore. The air felt different, thinner, cooler. She could feel smooth stone beneath her bare feet, cold against her skin. Above her, the sky was darker than any night she'd ever seen on Earth, filled with stars that seemed closer, brighter, more alive. She looked down at her hands. They weren't her hands. The fingers were longer, the skin a pale color that seemed to glow faintly in the starlight. This wasn't a dream. Dreams don't feel this real. Dreams don't have weight and texture and the smell of something she couldn't quite name, something clean and electric in the air. Her name was Rebecca Chen, and she'd gone to the regression therapist because of nightmares, not the normal kind where you're falling or being chased. These were different. In every nightmare, she was trying to speak, trying to scream, but no sound would come out. She'd wake up with her throat tight, gasping for air, feeling like she'd forgotten something incredibly important. The therapist had suggested exploring past lives. Rebecca wasn't sure she believed in that kind of thing, but the nightmares were getting worse. She was barely sleeping, so she agreed to try. Now, standing on this strange stone surface under an alien sky, she felt that familiar tightness in her throat, that sense of needing to say something but not being able to. And then she saw them. They emerged from the shadows at the edge of her vision. 3 of them at first, then 5, then more. They were tall, maybe 7 or 8 feet, with bodies that seemed almost human but not quite. Their limbs were too long, their movements too smooth, too fluid. They wore no clothes, but their bodies had no features that would require clothing. Smooth, featureless skin that reflected the starlight, but it was their faces that stopped her breath. Or rather, what should have been their faces. They had eyes, large and dark and impossibly deep. They had the suggestion of a nose, just slight ridges in the surface of their skin. But where their mouths should have been, there was nothing. Just smooth, unbroken skin. The Silent Ones. The name came to her without her thinking it, as if she'd always known it. These were the Silent Ones. Rebecca felt her consciousness shift, settling more fully into this other body, this other life. She wasn't Rebecca anymore. She was Tara, and Tara had lived here, on this world, thousands of years ago by Earth's reckoning, maybe tens of thousands. Time worked differently here. This place was called the Teaching Ground. It wasn't a planet in the way Earth was a planet. It existed somewhere between physical reality and something else, some other dimension or frequency of existence. Souls came here to learn, to prepare for incarnations on physical worlds. Tara was one of those souls, currently in a semi-physical form, solid enough to touch and feel but not truly material in the way flesh and bone are material. The Silent Ones were the teachers. They had always been here, for as long as anyone could remember. No one knew where they came from, or what they truly were. Some said they were advanced souls who had completed all their incarnations and chosen to stay behind to guide others. Some said they were beings from a dimension humans couldn't comprehend, temporarily lowering their vibration to interact with souls in training. Some said they were aspects of the creative force itself, consciousness given shape. What everyone agreed on was that they never spoke. Not with voices, not with mouths. They had evolved beyond the need for verbal communication, or perhaps they'd never had it to begin with. Tara had been here for what felt like years, though time was strange in this place. Days and nights passed, marked by the rotation of the sky above, but she didn't age, didn't hunger, didn't tire in the way physical bodies do. She was here to learn about Earth, about humanity, about the mission she would undertake when she incarnated there, because that was the purpose of the Teaching Ground. Souls came here to prepare for difficult incarnations, lives where they would play important roles in the evolution of consciousness on various worlds. Earth was one of many such worlds, and it required special preparation because humans were a young species, still struggling with the weight of physical existence, still learning the most basic lessons about love and unity. The Silent Ones approached her now, moving with that unsettling grace that made them seem to glide rather than walk. The nearest one stopped directly in front of her, towering over her smaller form. Its eyes met hers, and suddenly her mind exploded with information. Not words, not images exactly. It was pure knowing, pure understanding downloaded directly into her consciousness. She saw Earth as it was thousands of years ago. She saw herself there, living as a human, experiencing the heavy density of physical flesh, the confusion of forgetting her true nature, the pain and joy of human relationships. She saw her purpose. She would be a bridge, a translator between the physical and the spiritual. She would remember, even if only dimly, that there was more to existence than what human senses could perceive. And through her life, through her choices and her struggles, she would help others remember too. Not by preaching or teaching directly, but by being an example, by holding a frequency that others could feel, even if they couldn't name it. The Silent One's presence in her mind was overwhelming. It wasn't invasive exactly, but it was so vast, so much more than her individual consciousness could contain. She felt herself starting to fragment under the weight of all that information, all that knowing, and then it withdrew, stepping back, and she could breathe again, could think again. The knowledge remained, but compressed now, manageable, stored somewhere deep in her soul where she could access it when needed. Over the following days, weeks, months, the Silent Ones continued her training. They would appear at different times, sometimes alone, sometimes in groups. Each encounter brought new lessons, new understandings. They showed her what humans called angels, beings of pure light and energy who worked directly with souls, offering protection and guidance. But the Silent Ones were different from angels. Angels were messengers, intermediaries between the divine source and individual souls. The Silent Ones were something else. They were the architects, the planners, the ones who designed the grand curriculum that souls would experience. Tara learned that every major civilization on Earth had been influenced by the Silent Ones, not directly. They never appeared to humans in physical form, but through inspiration, through dreams, through the subtle guidance of incarnated souls who carried their teachings. Ancient Egypt. The mystery schools there had been established by souls trained at the teaching ground. Souls who remembered, however dimly, the lessons of the Silent Ones. The priests and priestesses who maintained those schools thought they were serving the gods, and in a way they were, but the gods themselves were often just masks, personifications of the deeper truths the Silent Ones wanted humanity to understand. The same pattern repeated throughout human history. Ancient Greece, with its philosophers who spoke of the realm of forms and the cave of shadows. India, with its rishis and yogis, who taught that the material world was Maya, illusion, and that true reality lay beyond. China, with its sages who understood the Tao, the way, the flow of existence that couldn't be named but only experienced. All of these teachings, however distorted by human interpretation and cultural context, originated from the same source. The Silent Ones, working patiently across thousands of years, planting seeds of remembrance in the human collective consciousness. But the Silent Ones didn't just teach about spirituality and philosophy. They taught about practicality too, about how to live as a spiritual being in a physical world. Tara spent time learning about human emotions, those intense experiences that were unique to embodied existence. The Silent Ones showed her fear, not by making her feel it. They couldn't do that here in this semi-physical state, but by sharing the essence of it. Fear was what happened when consciousness forgot its immortal nature and identified completely with the temporary vehicle of the body. Fear of death, fear of pain, fear of loss. These were the great challenges of human existence, the obstacles that every incarnated soul had to learn to overcome. They showed her love, not the divine love that permeated all existence, not the unconditional acceptance of source consciousness, but human love, the specific, personal, sometimes desperate attachment that humans formed with each other. This too was a gift and a challenge. Love could wake people up, could remind them of their connection to all things, but love could also trap them, could make them possessive and jealous and afraid. They showed her anger, sadness, joy, confusion, the full spectrum of human emotional experience, and through it all, the lesson was the same. Emotions are not the enemy. Emotions are information. They are the way consciousness experiences itself in physical form. The goal is not to transcend emotion, but to understand it, to feel it fully without being controlled by it. Tara practiced what she learned. The teaching ground included simulation spaces where souls could experience something similar to physical existence without fully incarnating. She lived through countless scenarios, each one designed to prepare her for the challenges she would face on Earth. In one simulation, she was a mother watching her child die. The grief was overwhelming, crushing, all-consuming, but underneath the grief, held by the silent ones, who observed without interfering. She could still feel the truth. The child wasn't truly gone. Consciousness couldn't be destroyed. This was just a temporary separation, a brief moment in the infinite existence of the soul. In another simulation, she was a warrior, fighting for a cause she believed in. The adrenaline, the fear, the desperate will to survive. The moment of death when a blade pierced her chest and everything went dark. And then the release, the sudden freedom, the realization that she was so much more than that body, that life. In another, she was a lover, experiencing the heights of passion and intimacy with another soul. The joy of that connection, the sense of completion, of being seen and known completely. And then the loss when that lover died, leaving her alone, learning to find wholeness within herself again, to love without attachment. Each simulation ended with the silent ones present, waiting for her to return to full awareness. And each time, they would share more knowledge, more context, more understanding of what she had just experienced. But it wasn't just about learning through experience. The silent ones also shared the bigger picture, the cosmic context that made sense of it all. They showed her Earth's position in the universe, not just physically but spiritually. Earth was a school, one of many. Souls came here to learn specific lessons that were harder to learn in the less dense, more harmonious realms. Earth was special because it included so much polarity, so much contrast, light and dark, good and evil, love and fear. These extremes created intense learning opportunities. A single lifetime on Earth could advance a soul's evolution more than dozens of lifetimes on easier worlds. But Earth was also dangerous. The density of physical existence and the veil of forgetting that descended when a soul incarnated meant that many souls got lost. They identified so completely with their human persona that they forgot their true nature entirely. They could spend multiple lifetimes trapped in cycles of karma and suffering, making the same mistakes over and over, never quite waking up to the bigger reality. That's why the silent ones maintained the teaching ground. Souls who volunteered for important missions on Earth, souls who would serve as lighthouses for others, needed special preparation. They needed to be reminded so deeply of who they truly were that even the veil of forgetting could uncompletely erase that knowledge. Tara met other souls at the teaching ground. There were dozens of them, all preparing for different missions, different lifetimes on different worlds. Some were going to Earth like she was, others were heading to worlds she'd never heard of, places with different physical laws and different evolutionary challenges. She became close with a few of them. There was Orin, who would incarnate on Earth as a healer, someone who would remember the body's ability to heal itself when the mind and emotions were aligned. There was Lissa, who would be a teacher, someone who would help children remember to trust their intuition and inner knowing. There was Kaiman, who would be a scientist, someone who would work to bridge the gap between material science and spiritual understanding. They would practice together, share their simulation experiences, support each other through the difficult lessons, and always, the silent ones watched, present but not intrusive, teaching but not controlling. They had infinite patience. They understood that learning takes time, that souls need to come to realizations on their own, rather than having them forced upon them. As Tyra's training progressed, she began to notice something. The silent ones weren't just teachers. They were also holding something, maintaining something. The teaching ground itself felt stable, peaceful, despite the intense learning happening within it. And that stability came from them. She realized they were generating a field, a frequency, that kept the space protected and pure. Without them, the teaching ground would collapse, would be unable to maintain its position between dimensions. They were like pillars holding up a roof, or anchors keeping a ship from drifting away. This was their service. This was their sacrifice. Because maintaining the teaching ground meant they couldn't move forward in their own evolution. They were trapped here, not by force, but by choice, holding the space so others could learn and grow. Tara felt a wave of gratitude so intense it brought tears to her eyes. These beings, who could have been anything, done anything, chose to stay here, to serve, to teach, to hold the space for countless souls across countless ages. One of the silent ones approached her, sensing her emotion. Its presence filled her mind again, and she understood. This wasn't sacrifice to them. This was joy. This was purpose. They didn't see it as being trapped. They saw it as being exactly where they chose to be, doing exactly what they wanted to do. Service wasn't a burden. Service was love in action. The lessons settled into her heart, and she knew it would stay with her through her upcoming incarnation and beyond. True purpose isn't found in grand achievements or personal glory. True purpose is found in service, in giving, in helping others along their path. The day came when Tara's training was complete. She stood at the edge of the teaching ground, looking out at a doorway of light that would take her to Earth, to her human incarnation, to the life she'd been preparing for. The silent ones gathered around her, more of them than she'd ever seen together before. Dozens, maybe hundreds, forming a circle with her at the center. Their collective presence was almost unbearable in its intensity, their combined consciousness like a sun blazing in her awareness. And then, for the first and only time, she heard them, not with ears, not with words, but with something deeper than both. A communication that bypassed all normal channels and spoke directly to her soul. They showed her the full scope of her upcoming life, not the details. Those would unfold naturally and had to remain hidden behind the veil, but the essence of it, the challenges she'd face, the pain she'd endure, the moments of doubt when she'd wonder if any of it mattered, the times she'd feel alone, abandoned, forgotten by the universe, and they showed her the truth. She would never be alone. They would be with her, always, not intervening, not making things easier, but present, witnessing, holding the field, sending subtle guidance through dreams and intuition and synchronicities that most would dismiss as coincidence. They showed her the ripple effect of her life, how her struggles would inspire others, how her breakthroughs would create pathways for others to follow, how her simple existence as someone who remembered, even dimly, would help lift the collective consciousness of humanity just a little bit higher. One life might seem insignificant in the vast scope of cosmic time, but every life mattered. Every soul that incarnated with awareness, with purpose, with the willingness to serve, helped tip the balance toward awakening. Tara felt herself beginning to cry, the emotion overwhelming her semi-physical form. She wanted to thank them, wanted to tell them how much this all meant, wanted to express the love and gratitude bursting from her heart. But words felt inadequate. Words could never capture what she felt. And then she realized that was the point. That was the final lesson. The silent ones didn't speak because silence was more powerful than words. Presence was more powerful than language. Being was more powerful than doing. She let the gratitude fill her without trying to express it. Let the love pour through her without trying to direct it. And in that moment of complete surrender, complete acceptance, she understood. This was what they'd been teaching her all along. This was the truth behind every simulation, every lesson, every moment of training. You don't have to speak to communicate. You don't have to do to serve. Your presence, your consciousness, your frequency is enough. Just by being awake, aware, and aligned with love, you change the world. The silent ones stepped back, and the doorway of light blazed brighter. It was time. Tara took one last look at them, trying to memorize every detail, knowing that when she incarnated, the veil would fall and most of this would be forgotten. But they sent her one final message, a promise encoded so deeply in her soul that no veil could completely erase it. We are with you, always. When you feel lost, remember silence. When you feel alone, remember presence. When you doubt your purpose, remember this moment. And then she stepped through the doorway into light, into forgetting, into the life that waited for her on Earth. Rebecca gasped, her eyes flying open. She was back in the therapist's office, back in her body, back in the present moment. But everything felt different. The world looked the same, but her perception of it had fundamentally shifted. The therapist, an older woman named Martha, sat quietly in her chair, giving Rebecca space to process. She'd seen this before, the disorientation that came when someone accessed a particularly profound past life memory. Rebecca's throat felt tight, that familiar sensation from her nightmares. But now she understood it. She'd been Tara. She'd trained with the silent ones. And when she'd incarnated as a human, the memory of their wordless communication had created a conflict. Part of her remembered a more pure form of connection, and the limitation of human speech felt suffocating by comparison. The nightmares weren't random. They were her soul, trying to remind her, trying to break through the veil, trying to tell her that there was more to communication than words, more to existence than what her human senses perceived. Martha spoke softly, her voice gentle. What did you experience? Rebecca tried to explain, but the words felt clumsy, inadequate. How do you describe beings who teach through pure knowing? How do you capture the feeling of standing at the edge of incarnation, about to forget everything you'd learned? She did her best. and Martha listened with the attention of someone who'd heard many impossible stories and learned not to judge them. When Rebecca finished, Martha nodded slowly. "Do you think this was real?" she asked. "A true past life memory?" Rebecca considered the question. In the strictest sense, she had no way to prove it. Maybe it was her imagination. Maybe her subconscious had created an elaborate story to help her process her nightmares and anxiety. Maybe it was symbolic rather than literal. But, in another, deeper sense, the question of whether it was real missed the point. The experience had transformed her. The knowledge she'd gained felt true in a way that transcended the need for external validation. And isn't that what matters? Not whether something can be scientifically verified, but whether it helps you grow, heal, and understand yourself more deeply. "I think it's real in the way that matters," Rebecca said finally. "Whether it happened exactly as I experienced it, I don't know. But the truth in it, the lessons, those are real." She went home that day feeling lighter than she had in years. The tightness in her throat had eased. That night, for the first time in months, she slept without nightmares. But the experience didn't end there. In the weeks that followed, Rebecca noticed changes in her life. She found herself drawn to meditation, to sitting in silence rather than filling every moment with noise and distraction. She discovered that when she was quiet, when she stopped the constant chatter of her thinking mind, she could feel something, a presence, watching, supporting, guiding without interfering. Were those the silent ones? Her guides, angels, her higher self? She didn't know, and found she didn't need to know. Labels and categories felt less important than the direct experience of connection. She also noticed changes in how she communicated with others. She listened more deeply, paying attention not just to words but to the energy behind them. She could sense what people were feeling even when they said everything was fine. And she found herself saying less, choosing her words more carefully. Recognizing that sometimes silence was the most powerful response, her relationships shifted. Some friends drifted away, uncomfortable with her new energy, her new way of being. But other people appeared, drawn to something they couldn't quite name but recognized at a soul level. She built a community of seekers, people who were also remembering, also waking up, also trying to live from a place of deeper awareness. Rebecca started working with energy healing, discovering she had a natural gift for it. She would place her hands on clients and feel information flowing through her. Not words, not images, but pure knowing about what was blocked, what needed to be released, what was trying to heal. It reminded her of the silent ones, that wordless transmission of understanding. She realized that her purpose, the mission she'd prepared for at the teaching ground, wasn't about doing something grand or famous. It was about being present, holding a frequency, offering a reminder to others that they were more than their physical bodies, more than their thoughts and emotions, more than their roles and identities. Just like the silent ones held the teaching ground stable, she could hold space for others. Not teaching directly, not preaching or evangelizing, just being an anchor point, a reminder, a reflection of what was possible when you remembered your true nature. The nightmares never came back, but the tight throat feeling would return occasionally, usually when she was in situations where people were being dishonest or manipulative with their words. She realized it was a gift, a sensitivity to the misalignment between what people said and what they truly meant. The part of her that remembered communication beyond words could sense the distortion that happened when language was used to hide rather than reveal truth. She learned to trust that sensation. When her throat tightened in someone's presence, she knew to be cautious, to listen more to their energy than their words. And when her throat felt open and relaxed, she knew she was with someone authentic, someone whose words aligned with their heart. Rebecca also found herself drawn to ancient teachings. She studied the mystery schools of Egypt, the meditation practices of India, the wisdom traditions of indigenous cultures around the world. And in all of them, she recognized echoes of what the silent ones had taught her. The same core truths, expressed in different cultural contexts, using different symbols and stories, but pointing toward the same reality. Consciousness is primary. The physical world is a temporary manifestation. We are immortal souls having brief human experiences. Love is the fundamental force of the universe. Service to others is the highest calling. These weren't new ideas. They'd been taught for thousands of years by mystics and sages across every culture. But understanding them intellectually was different from knowing them experientially, from having them encoded in your soul through direct transmission from beings who existed beyond normal human comprehension. Rebecca sometimes wondered about the others from the teaching ground, Oren, Lissa, Kaiman, and the rest. Were they here on Earth now? Had they incarnated as planned? Were they out there somewhere, also waking up to their true purpose, also working in their own unique ways to help humanity evolve? She had no way of knowing for certain, but sometimes she'd meet someone and feel an instant recognition, a sense of familiarity that went beyond this lifetime. In those moments, she wondered if she was encountering a soul she'd trained with, a fellow student of the Silent Ones. She never asked, never tried to confirm it. Some mysteries were meant to remain mysteries. What mattered was that she was doing the work she came here to do, living from awareness, holding the frequency, serving in whatever small ways presented themselves, being a reminder to others that there was more to existence than what appeared on the surface. She thought often about the Silent Ones, about their patience, their dedication, their willingness to serve without recognition or reward. They had shown her that true power wasn't loud or flashy. True power was quiet, steady, constant, like a river that carves canyons not through force but through persistent, gentle pressure over vast spans of time. That's how consciousness evolution worked too. Not through dramatic, sudden transformations, though those could happen, but through steady, gradual awakening. One person at a time, one moment of awareness at a time, one choice to act from love rather than fear at a time. And the Silent Ones, along with countless other beings working from higher dimensions, held the space for that awakening, sent subtle guidance, offered inspiration, maintained the connection between the physical and spiritual realms so that souls incarnating on Earth wouldn't be completely cut off from their true home. Rebecca felt immense gratitude for them, for their service, for their teachings, for their patience with humanity as we stumbled through our lessons, making mistakes, forgetting and remembering, and forgetting again. She made a practice of honoring them, not with elaborate rituals or formal prayers, but with silence. Every morning, she would sit in meditation and simply be present, aware, open, and in that silence, she would feel them, not as individual beings, but as a collective presence, watching, supporting, loving, without attachment. She came to understand that they weren't separate from her. They were an aspect of consciousness that she could tune into, that everyone could tune into if they learned to quiet their minds and open their hearts. The Silent Ones weren't somewhere else. They were everywhere, woven into the fabric of existence itself, always available to those who knew how to perceive them. This realization changed everything. It meant she was never alone. None of us are ever alone. We're surrounded by support, guidance, love, but we have to learn to perceive it. We have to learn to tune in. We have to learn to be still enough, quiet enough, present enough to feel the presence that's always there. That was the gift of the Silent Ones, not just the specific teachings they'd given her at the teaching ground, but the invitation to live from that deeper awareness, to remember that silence holds more truth than words, that presence holds more power than action, that being holds more value than doing. Rebecca shared her story cautiously, knowing that many would dismiss it as fantasy or delusion, but she also knew that for those who were ready to hear it, who were also waking up to their own memories and purpose, her story would serve as confirmation, as validation, as a reminder that they weren't crazy, weren't alone, weren't making it all up. We're all souls on a journey. We've all trained and prepared. We've all forgotten and are now remembering. And we're all supported by beings and forces beyond our normal perception, guiding us home. The Silent Ones are still there, at the teaching ground, holding the space, teaching the souls who come, preparing the next generation of lightworkers who will incarnate on Earth and other worlds, serving without recognition, loving without condition, teaching without words. And maybe, if you sit in silence tonight before you sleep, if you quiet your mind and open your heart, you'll feel them too. A presence, a knowing, a reminder that you're so much more than you remember, that you came here on purpose, that you're never alone, that you're exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you came here to do, even if you've forgotten why. Subscribe for more journeys into the memories we all carry.